Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another special Cerule call. And Cerule short is special because we're a biotech company with cutting edge, one of a type, proven products to help all sorts of needs in the body, foundational needs. And what we have is just absolutely fabulous. Now, before we get started, let me just give you a message on behalf of Cerule, and that is Cerule products do not claim to cure or heal any medical conditions. While we have clinical trials that prove the efficiency of our products, we do not claim to heal or cure any medical conditions, and that ends the corporate message. And today, we're going to talk about something that's so foundational to all of us, and that is inflammation. Many people say that inflammation is the cause of most disease. Some people say all disease. And inflammation is, it's a serious thing. Not only do we feel discomfort when we have inflammation, it is actually a factor. It's the start of a fire of many diseases. And today we are so fortunate. We have a master naturopath on the line. She's got an enormous amount of clinical experience with the Cerule product. She's trained in biochemistry. She could have been a medical doctor, but she wanted to do things in a better, more natural way. And we are so lucky to have her here with Cerule and on our webinar today. So we're no more to say. Linda Hoggard, are you on the webinar?
Yes, I sure am. Hello, everyone. Hi, Ian.
Well, hi, Linda. And you look fabulous. I think you're growing younger as time goes on.
A bit of luck. I sure take enough Cerule, so I can see Linda, the effects that it's had over the years. It's managing my aging process really well.
Oh.
My daughter turns 18 today, and yeah.
My goodness. So when you go out with her, they think it's your sister.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? We'll see. We're going out tonight, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, fabulous. Anyway, today, Linda, we're going to talk about something really serious, really important to all of our wellness, and many people aren't even aware of it, and that's inflammation. And so if we could start off is, what is inflammation, and what is acute inflammation, and what is chronic inflammation? Let's cover inflammation. What is it?
Inflammation, yeah, exactly. And it's a really big subject, and I've been kind of waiting for this webinar today to really talk about inflammation and to keep kind of the concept of inflammation quite simple. So one thing I noticed that I'm always saying about inflammation, so that people can get a tangible idea of it, is to really realize that like inflammation are chemical signaling compounds. These are chemical signals that have been produced in our body tissues and in our immune system, and they're signals to coordinate helping our body. And the signals are stimulated from hurting ourselves, trauma. They're stimulated from, if there's any damage to the cells, so infections, trauma, toxicity, and the signals are sent out to coordinate our immune system and our stem cells to come and help that area. So essentially the signals are kind of saying, come and help me, come and help me. We need increased blood flow, we need new cells, we're going to need stem cells, we need parts of the immune system because there might be infection. And so this is essentially the acute phase of inflammation, and it's really, really necessary, and it's kind of life-saving, and it's part of our body's mechanisms to protect and heal ourselves. Now, this is all good and well, except that sometimes it doesn't turn itself off, and then that can lead into chronic inflammation, systemic inflammation, and potentially silent inflammation. And then there are other factors that go on in our body that just create these chronic levels of inflammation, just chronic levels of signals saying, hey, there's something wrong, we need resources. And so hence inflammation can move from an acute to a chronic kind of phase.
Now, Linda, you mentioned something very interesting there, silent inflammation. So, how do we know we have inflammation? How do we know what are the signs of inflammation, especially if it's silent? I mean, that's intriguing.
Exactly.
What you just said.
So I think about silent inflammation in the areas in our body where we don't have pain receptors. So in the areas we have pain receptors, we feel our inflammation. We might kind of find it hard to turn over in bed at night, to hang up the washing, to turn our head to back the car. Things are stiff and sore. And these are all these chemical signals in our bodies that are triggering our pain receptors. So those are all classic signs and symptoms of chronic inflammation. And then silent inflammation, if you think about our blood vessels, walls, and our hearts and our lungs and brains, livers, organs, glands, we don't have pain receptors there. So the inflammation in those areas are very real, but they become silent and then lead, when you talk about inflammation being at the sort of biochemical basis of all dysfunction and dis-ease in the body, it is, because when we drill down to what's happening in the body, right at the bottom of it are these chronic chemical signals that aren't getting calmed down and kind of sorted out. And so when that happens long term, say in our blood vessels, we might have damage in the blood vessels from increased stress hormones, toxicity, oxidation. So the blood vessels get damaged, and then they become inflamed, and then from being inflamed they calcify, and then that breaks off and we experience a heart disease. And the inflammation is very much the process that goes into an ongoing process that leads to the quite significant disease states. And we would see that in the brain, we get lots of signs and symptoms of inflammation in the brain, and that might be headaches or migraines where the blood vessels are inflamed and we're getting either constrictions or expansions in the blood vessels, creating these surging type headaches. Might experience issues with our memory, with our mood very much, and generally, sometimes I'm working with people who have a lot of inflammation, and sometimes they're quite difficult to understand, and they might repeat themselves, and they get confused. And it's a delight to hear, as their inflammation is regulated, that these people become more coherent and easy to understand, and life just becomes easier for them again. So I think other things that I would look for in people in regards to inflammation are the classic signals of inflammation. But in acute inflammation, that's redness and swelling and heat. So a lot of us can probably relate to hurting areas of our body, and then those joints might become red and sore and inflamed. We might have chronic examples of that because we've overworked areas of our body. And one thing I observe with people who are chronically inflamed is that they're often puffy and they're swollen. And what I tend to put that down to is that there are all these extra inflammatory signals in the body, and the body and the liver can't process all those signals, and it actually the body then goes into fluid retention to sort of change the concentration of those inflammatory compounds. So hence it's quite common when people start changing their life, of their nutritional choices, their supplementation become less inflamed, that they start shrinking quite quickly. And it's not necessarily fat loss, but it's actually loss of fluid, because the triggers for the inflammation are getting reduced.
Now, Linda, this is so interesting because you're talking about inflammation and the biochemical process behind it. And Cerule is a biotech company with one-of-a-kind proven products, all scientifically researched, and they are so cutting edge. And we have several products that help address inflammation. We have the Stem Enhance, the Cyactive, and the Cyactive Joint. So let's go into the Stem Enhance. What does that mean for inflammation?
Clinically, I think it means one of the most profound things I've ever seen with helping people change the trajectory of their health and their inflammation. And so part of that is that the algae that the Stem Enhance concentrate is made from has a pigment in it called phycocyanin, which obviously we're going to talk about more with the other products. But just to remind people that there is a certain amount of phycocyanin in the Stem Enhance concentrate, and this pigment itself is directly anti-inflammatory. My clinical observations are that when you really help someone to mobilise the resources of their own stem cells in their body, that over time, this is the most anti-inflammatory thing that I've seen happen for people. So when we go back to thinking about inflammation as signals saying, help me, I need help. You know, one of the things in chronic, silent, systemic inflammation that the body's really needing is more of its own stem cells, so that the stem cells can become new cells of that area, rebuild, repair, and regenerate. And my sense is that this is why we see such a sort of a incline of inflammatory issues in people as they get older, because they're not actually getting their stem cell migration like they did when they were younger, and they have that compounding effect. So hence they can have a lot of signs and symptoms in aging that are to do with just increased inflammatory compounds and a decrease in stem cells. So I think it's a great chance to sort of remind people that with Stem Enhance Ultra, we have a product scientifically proven that within 50 minutes of taking 2 capsules, you have at least a 25% increase in your own stem cell migration. And then you can invest in mobilizing your own stem cells to rebuild, repair, regenerate your body. And then over time, you know, the things that change in people over 1-2+ years of consistently supporting their body are examples of their body becoming less inflamed, and things that possibly might have turned into problems don't turn into problems, and everything is just more regulated.
I just love that. Nip it in the bud, so problems don't turn into problems.
Yes. Yeah. I
love that analogy. I love it. Now, our second product is Cyactive. Can you tell us what is Cyactive and what influence does that have on your inflammatory pathways?
Absolutely. So as you've heard me talk about with the Stem Enhance product, the algae that the Stem Enhance concentrate is made from is high in a blue-green pigment called phycocyanin. And so phycocyanin has such specific anti-inflammatory properties that Cerule actually has brought to the world a product based specifically on phycocyanin. So if you look at the label, you'll see that the phycocyanin is actually extracted from spirulina rather than the AFA algae. And that's because these blue-green algae have this in common. And so sometimes people say to me, oh, but I take spirulina. But really what you're getting with Cyactive is you're getting the concentrated phycocyanin. What you're taking is phycocyanin, which is a pigment that directly blocks an inflammatory pathway called COX-2. So COX-2 is a really specific inflammatory pathway for leading to sort of chronic systemic inflammation in the body, and particularly to a lot of discomfort. It's involved in the prostaglandin pathways that create a lot of symptoms in our bodies around breathing issues, discomfort issues. And it's really exciting, and particularly as a practitioner, to have a product that naturally just blocks COX-2 because the pharmaceutical options actually block the COX-1 pathway as well. And so when we talk about and have experiences of taking pharmaceutical non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, many people say, oh, I've taken that and they've ended up with gut issues. Sometimes people end up with ulcers. And that's because in these pathways, the COX-1 pathway is very protective and it protects our gut lining. And the pharmaceutical options block that pathway and COX-2. So you get sort of these amazing anti-inflammatory effects, but they come with side effects. Now, when you can invest in a natural pigment that just blocks COX-2, you get those pathways being regulated without the side effects. And that's really, really beneficial.
Yeah, no, that's very, very beneficial. Now, we've got another product, the third one called Cyactive Joint. How does that influence our inflammatory pathways, especially target inflammation in our joints?
Exactly. So after we'd all had such great results with Cyactive Joint was brought to the market to particularly use the phycocyanin compound and to add other things that have been scientifically proven to support our joints. So this is using the systemic anti-inflammatory effects of phycocyanin, but adding in direct joint support with the eggshell membrane. So I always say to people who are taking glucosamine and chondroitin, this is a way to get those compounds in this product with extra anti-inflammatory support. And when you're taking that with eggshell membrane, it's a whole food source of the glucosamine and chondroitin. So this is to support the existing cells of the joints to keep them well cushioned. And then there's been lots of other research around other compounds. So one that's been added to this formula is cherry tart extract. And cherry tart extract has significant antioxidant effects to protect the cells of the joints and therefore to prevent the joints becoming inflamed. And then there's a direct specific anti-inflammatory, which is boswellia, that also works on these inflammatory pathways that lead to joint stiffness and discomfort. So what I think is really, really cool when you look into Cyactive Joint is all those ingredients that I've listed. Each ingredient, Cerule has sourced the clinically researched high-end versions of those ingredients, and all of those ingredients have got their own clinical trials that say if you're going to use this for antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, joint effect, you need to use this amount of the product. And so when you go back and research this product, it's got the very clinically tested versions of those ingredients, and it's all at the right amounts to get the outcome. So hence why Cyactive Joint is in a big bottle. There's 120 capsules here, and it's had significant research, and it shows that that to target these areas, to use 2 capsules twice a day.
Well, we're covering a lot of bases with our products. They're just phenomenal. Now, what other things can we do to help with our inflammation?
Exactly. And I guess as a naturopath, that's something I'm quite passionate about, is helping people with their lifestyle and dietary choices. Because, you know, I guess people in my profession and looking at how the body would work, etc., we're always lamenting about lifestyle and dietary choices. And when I think about each of those choices, really they have such a big effect on our bodies, because a lot of the choices we make can either produce inflammation or they can reduce inflammation. So unfortunately, in a Western lifestyle that's become quite sedentary, that's high in kind of sugar, can have trans fatty acids, fast foods, crap food, etc., those things all drive inflammation because they damage our body. So you can get a lot of inflammation being driven from your gut lining from just eating foods that your body's really not that keen to digest. We know that things like alcohol and sugar and grains are very inflammatory on the digestive tract. And then we can choose foods that actually help our body target inflammation. There's lots of research around broccoli and cruciferous vegetables and just eating well. I'm forever kind of saying to people, you know, you've got to eat food, not filler. The food fuels and feeds your body. The filler is inflammatory and takes you away from where you're wanting to go with your health. And I'd really say not to underestimate the effect of just eating chronic inflammatory food regularly. It just really builds up, you know, and sometimes you can't take enough product to sort of compensate for that. So I am quite passionate about people taking product to regulate their body's inflammation, help their body heal itself, and also to live kind of a better life. And the other thing to really add to that is stress. You know, it's really important to sit down and kind of look at your life and look at particularly the chronic stresses of your life and really make some significant decisions how to rectify that in your life, because those things, they really add up. the chronic levels of cortisol, and then when we go into acute stress and adrenaline, these are very damaging on the tissues, particularly the blood vessels leading into the heart and the blood vessels leading into the kidneys, and they really compound our aging process. And so we can reduce our stress, and then we can also bring in stress relieving processes like yoga, meditation, going for walks, being in nature, all those sort of things. So if you sort of think about your life and you think, oh yeah, kind of eating sugary, grainy things for breakfast sounds pretty inflammatory to me. And I sit down at a desk all day, I'm really stressed, I'm not happy, I don't get out into nature, I'm not adding any superfoods or biotech nutrition to my life. That's a road really heading in a certain direction, and there's going to be some disease states that pop up from that. And that you can really, take the time to actually go, okay, I'm going to change the course of my life. I'm going to start eating more food, less filler. I'm going to really address the stress in my life. I'm going to start getting some exercise. I'm going to start doing some things that kind of make me happy. I'm going to get better sleep, because sleep is huge. And for anyone listening to this who has sleep apnea, you need to be using your CPAP machine. Otherwise, your stress hormones are off the chart. And then add in biotech nutrition, support your stem cells, mobilize the resources of your body. When we talk about stem cell nutrition, the mood enhancement, the nutrition, feed your body and regulate your inflammatory processes, and just take another road that actually leads to a far better outcome and aging process for you.
I love it, Linda. You're covering all the bases.
Yes.
Not just our products, but all the bases to take away the drivers.
Yeah, the drivers.
So we can end up in a good place, not a bad place. Now, with that, look, we can open the call up if there's any questions out there. If you want to unmute yourself, I think Guy Slocum had a question. So if you want to unmute yourself, Guy, and fire away with your question.
Hi, Linda. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Hi, Guy.
Hi. I've got sleep apnea, and I've had a CPAP machine for years, and I agree it helps. But I often do things that people tell me should be stressful, but I don't feel stressed by them in the least. Am I being stressed, or can I mentally get rid of it by telling myself that I'm not stressed?
Well, I think too, stress has got a lot to do with how we psychologically interpret something happening in our life. And therefore, that's, if psychologically you go, oh my God, this is not how I want my life to be, which ultimately, when you think about stress, it's things not going the way you want it to. I think someone explained it to me like that years ago. And I use that myself, if I'm feeling stressed, I'm like, what's happening that I'm not accepting, or things aren't going the way I want them to. And so your psychological, how you accept and interpret things will very much change how your adrenal glands then produce those stress hormones for it. So I do think for one person, what can be stressful is not stressful for another person.
That's great. No, understood.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Now, I think
Deborah
Sada has a hand up, and she has a lot of experience. Deborah, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself or not. It's up to you.
Yes.
Hi, Deborah.
Share with us.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Hi. I was on video, but I'm vain.
Okay.
Let me just say this. I don't claim it anymore, but I was diagnosed with narcolepsy, with cataplexy, along with restless leg syndrome and severe sleep apnea. I was one of the unfortunate persons that was on the CPAP machine that they've recalled. And it did get me down. I had to triple the amount of products I was taking, even add some bonded cysteine, things like that, because I did see the lumps. But I went back, and they have actually decreased in size. But now the sleep apnea, I had all the depression. I even had some aggression. I was angry, and, just my personality just wasn't me. And I'm always called a tender heart. And the problem with it was blood pressure. On the CPAP machine, if it's not the right pressure, you're still going to suffer with that. But I noticed with Stem Enhance, I'm more relaxed and I'm sleeping better. And recently, as you know, Linda, I added the Ciactive because when I first started taking it, I'm allergic to anti-inflammatories. So I got a little short of breath and slowed heart rate. But guess what? A whole year went by and I decided, wait a minute, I'm in trouble now with this CPAP machine. I've got to do everything. I took one Ciactive. And let me tell you, the pain in my back from my lungs. And, I want to keep this clean as far as, testimonial. But this is a new testimony. Listen, I've had 2 knee replacements, hip replacement, shoulder and ankle. And I've had numerous falls because of narcolepsy. And the doctors really, I was critical. Let me tell you something. Since I added the Ciactive, that's why I'm so enthusiastic. Oh my God. I can get up and I can just walk around. And my grandchildren said, Grandma, you don't use a cane or anything? I said, no. I have a scooter just for the fun of it when I want to go to Walmart or go to the zoo. And I don't want to walk as much as anybody else because I realize, I'm a little older. But listen, what these products have done for me, and the sleep disorder, I had no life. I mean, really, for 27 years, a lot of people thought I was dead because I couldn't wake up. Yeah. But thank God I am taking Stem Enhance. I'm taking Plasma Flow. I'm taking Ciactive. I haven't needed the joint support. I think I'm going to try it, but I haven't needed it because I'm not hurting anymore. Thank heavens. Thanks, Cerule.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's just about the narcolepsy. I got asked to recommend a serving suggestion for a lady in her early 40s with narcolepsy who had had to give up her work. And I recommended, seeing as she had more going on than average, to take at least 6 capsules a day, which she did. And 4 months later, she just messaged the most amazing recovery results of her narcolepsy. And when you think about that, when I was first asked about narcolepsy, I'm like, wow, it's just there will be inflammation in the brain targeting that. And I have worked here in New Zealand with a girl with Sleeping Beauty syndrome who was falling to sleep for up to 20 odd days at a time, which is quite life-threatening. Yeah, and had wonderful results just targeting inflammation through removing inflammatory things in her diet, in her case, particularly gluten, and using the Stem Enhance products. Pretty exciting.
Something else I noticed? My eyesight improved when I got on Ciactive. Yeah, and I'm severely nearsighted, can't see a thing, and all of a sudden I'm able to see from my bedroom into my kitchen. And I had to put my hand, I said, I don't even have my glasses on. And then I started being able to see the television. I'm going, oh, I know it's the Ciactive. So then there's inflammation of the eyes.
Exactly. It's inflammation. So a lot of, sometimes things have just deteriorated and they've changed, but sometimes we have all these symptoms like we don't hear as well, we don't see as well, we don't think as well, we don't feel as well, we haven't got the energy. And it's just these inflammatory compounds interfering with everything and taking away, our optimal ability to function.
Yes. So one thing, I'm going to rewrite my testimony because you know what? I've got new things to add to it. And if they thought it was good before, let me tell you something. It's even better now.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing we should have probably talked about is kind of gum disease. For anyone with receding gums and gum issues, that it is an indicator that your body is chronically inflamed. And many, many people say that once they start taking their products, that they get a lot of improvements in that area. And it's not overnight because, they're getting these symptoms because the whole thing's not functioning properly. But as they support their body day after day, week after week, month after month, as we get into sort of 6 to 12 months, the bleeding gums can stop and the symptoms that they're getting can really sort of stabilize and turn around. And that's just because they're actually able to target the underlying root cause.
I will concur with that. My mother had many, many things change in her life, but one of the things her dentist said to her was, my God, your gums have grown back. I've never seen that happen in a person of your age before. What are you doing? And the only thing she had changed was she'd added Stem Enhance to her routine.
Yes, yep. And I know Marita Mason would say that was one of the significant things that happened for her. And I was struggling 14 years ago. I would get some bleeding gums, and I think that stopped within 6 months, and I've never had a sign of it again.
Wonderful. Now, it is time to start wrapping up, but I think Guy Sloper wants to come on for another question.
No,
Having led the life of a reprobate in my early years,
Pilot and all.
and induced all these inflammatory responses that you're talking about. And then about 20 years ago, saw the light and started behaving properly. Have I done irreparable damage, or can I recover the damage that was originally done?
It really depends how much damage you've done. If you're concerned about your heart, I'd recommend you get a calcium scan of your heart, and that will tell you if there's anything kind of deeply damaged in that area. And there's things that you could ask me about to add in to your regime to target what might show up on that. It's a bit like sort of smoking, I can't remember the statistics, but within a couple of years there's a massive amount that things have sort of rebuilt and regenerated. But as people kind of get into their later years and develop things, it can often be linked back to that. So it's a really big subject. Yeah, and right. I think the brain and potentially setting off autoimmunity and having your body attacking itself, there can be a lot of things that we can then calm down and regulate, but it probably would have been better if that wasn't set off in the first place. But
great. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good. Harry, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, I've had tendinitis for the last year or so, possibly because of the fall I had when I broke my arm. It hurt the left knee, and I've been going to acupuncture 3 times a week to try to alleviate it. I have been taking 4 SEU every day, sometimes an extra couple, like today. With conjunctivitis, I've had probably 8 so far. But I'm all on SEU, Cyactive, and Cyactive joints.
Right.
It must be a very, very slow process.
I'll come now from my structural kinesiology and structural training, is that if your tendons aren't sitting mechanically where they need to sit, they'll be chronically inflamed. I guess Mark Anderson knows that this week I've also written an ebook on inflammation that it's still got a couple of layers of editing, but when it's finished, Mark will load it up to Success Team Accelerator. And in there I talk about structural alignment and the importance of the mechanics of the body working properly. Otherwise, you get chronic inflammation. So I'll have a think about. Quite a lot of my colleagues at the moment in Queensland can't practice what they're extremely good at. So I know exactly who I'd send you to, but her clinic's currently shut. So I think that's possibly where you need to look at, that when your body went through that mechanical stress that led to your ulnar breaking, that stress actually went up and did something into the tendons. I was working on a horse on Saturday that's had problems in its hoof and in the navicular, and we've used Stem Enhance and colour therapy, and it's settled down, but it actually had an injury show jumping, and then I went through and I just reset the tendons up the horse's leg. It was pretty cool because the horse wasn't lame anymore, but it wasn't positioning itself, and then as I got the tendon straight, it just went whoop. Yep. Yeah, it was really cool.
One of the worst things that happens for me is if I sit down, being a piano player all my life, I've spent a large part of my life sitting at the piano, and when I stand up sometimes, it's like I've been attacked by a tribe of pygmies, up and down the leg, in the glutes and so forth.
Yes.
And it really is a pain in the bum, to say the least. Yeah. But I'm gradually working at the acupuncture 3 times a week is helping.
Yep. And the products will help, and then just some good structural alignment. And how long are you sitting for when you're playing?
Sometimes up to an hour.
So you probably need to get up and stretch and
Yeah.
Get the blood flow and just stretch those muscle fibers.
Yeah, when you're conducting a show and playing and conducting a show, you don't really have much of a chance for a break.
Yeah. Well, do the best you can.
And you talked earlier on about alcohol and smoking. I've been 51 years on New Year's Day, 52 years on New Year's Day, no booze, and about 45 years no smokes.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So I've been trying to look after myself for the last 40 years at least. At 4 years on Cerule.
Yep. Yeah, it has been that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Anyway, thank you for all that, Linda.
Well, with that, it is time. We probably should wrap up. It's meant to be 30 minutes. We're like 36 minutes now. So with that, Harry, Mark, Guy, Deborah, and Linda Hoggard, you're an angel to all of us here at Cerule, helping us get well, stay well, and helping us all make a magnificent future. Thank you so much. And with that, bless you all. And we will be back the same time, same place in 2 weeks.
Great.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Linda.
Good call. I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.